Paola or Ebenezer. Mariel's asking for host.
Where did she go? She signed in as an attendee because she has her own personal link.
I just see that she wrote in the chat, but I can't. There you go. She's back.
Sorry, I couldn't find the link, so I just joined this way. Thank you, Paola. It's a crazy month. Okay. Hi, everyone. I think the only committee members that are joining in person are Richard and Radia. So let's see what happens.
I'm here.
You might want to sit over here.
Richard said he would be here around 7:15.
Sounds good. Hi, Radia. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a hectic month. Would you like to, since it'll just be you and Richard, would you mind kind of doing anything on that end in terms of the computer? I do have host privileges now. And let's see. And in case there are any members of the public that join in person as well, if you wouldn't mind supporting on that, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll give everyone maybe just another minute or two. We don't have quorum, obviously, because quorum is meant to be in person, and you know, it just is what it is this month, unfortunately. But we'll maybe kind of give an extra minute or two for maybe Tanisha to join. And I know, as you mentioned, I think Richard will be arriving in about 10 minutes, so we can start in the meantime. I will also just quickly, while we're waiting, just share the agenda. It was produced late, which is why you haven't seen it, and so apologies for that. Let me just pull it up really quickly.
Hello, how are you?
Good, and you?
Very well,
How you
thank you.
feeling?
Good.
After all that rain yesterday, right?
Yes.
Horrible.
Okay, my computer's being weird, but what I will do is copy the agenda into the chat, and then I will also send it to everyone. I will also read it out loud, but I think the privileges don't let me copy anything into the chat. So great, thank you, Jamila. Thanks for joining. Let me forward this way instead. Just really quickly. We'll get started in 1 minute. I just want to make sure everyone has this.
I'm trying to swing Wayne over, you know. Pero yo no se lo he pasado a...
Es que soy yo que lo fui yo que abrí.
Okay, I've just sent it to everyone, and again, I will kind of read out loud what it is. So that way for our members of the public who are joining us, but also for everyone here, just noting that it's obviously late. So good evening, everyone. We cannot call this meeting officially to order because we do not have quorum this month. But before, and I'll just kind of just quickly go through the agenda, and then we can kind of go through everything. But again, the meeting won't officially be called to order. Agenda item A is called to order, which can't happen. But agenda item B is welcome. C is presentation. So we were meant to have a presentation by some of the interns for the community board staff. They were working on updating the layout of the resource guide. So it was one of the things for some of our kind of older members on the committee. We were working on that maybe about a year or two ago. And we had expressed interest in one having the community board update its resource guide, which is on the website. And so some of that has started over the summer with some of the interns. And so they were actually going to present to us. However, Kathy sent me a text this morning. They're not ready to present just yet. I guess they're kind of still kind of getting everything together. So for that reason, that presentation will not happen this evening. Point D on the agenda is the kind of the monthly updates from elected representatives. Point E, it's monthly updates from community-based organizations. Point F, resolution on the standards for future housing developments. G, updates on committee priorities. H, old business. I, new business. J, adjournment. And I do have one item under new business, which I'll come to in a minute. So I'll pause there. And if our committee members would kindly take a moment just to briefly introduce yourselves, that'd be super helpful. Thank you. We can start. Ready? Since you're in person, maybe if you want to go ahead and start, and then we'll come with everyone online.
Hi, everybody. My name is Radia Barnes. I guess I'm coming up to my first full year of being on the community board. I'm on this committee as well as business development, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm
Indiana,
happy to go next. Hi all, I'm Indiana Porta, and I am also coming up on 1 year for being on CB12. And I was on a community board on CB9 before, and I sit on this committee as well as the Public Safety Committee, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
I'll go. Hey everyone, my name is Tanisha Grant. I also am coming up on a year on the community board. I sit on this committee and I also sit on the youth and education committee. Thank you for coming out, everyone.
Well, let me jump in here. I'm Marshall Vanderpool. I'm a public member sitting on the Housing and Human Services Committee. Formerly, I was the first vice president of the Dyckman Resident Association. And, well, I'll land right here. Thank you.
Jay, Emily.
Hi everyone, Jay Bias. I'm coming up on my first term as a board member. Hopefully I'll be reappointed, who knows. And I'm also a part of the bylaws committee. I'll pass it on to Emily.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily Marte. Been in Washington Heights for about 30 years and happy to be here in the Housing Committee meeting. I don't think I'll be reappointed, but yes, happy to be here.
Thanks, everyone. And I'm Marielle, and I chair the Housing and Human Services Committee. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. Just for our members of the public, just to be aware and just to kind of give context to my mentioning about not having quorum. So there's been an update to the kind of open meetings law and how kind of the city conducts business, or the state conducts business, excuse me. And so it does require in-person attendance, unfortunately, due to, kind of a variety of personal circumstances, including my own. A number of us are virtual this evening. However, we can still meet as a committee, but we are not able to, again, officially call the meeting to order or vote on anything. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you kind of join us at future meetings. And I'm not sure if you hear my daughter's toys in the background. But we meet the first Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. So thank you again. So with that, we'll move quickly on to kind of monthly updates from elected representatives. I know that Jamila is on the line, but I don't know if Jamila can speak. I don't think she can. She mentioned that she's in a separate meeting. And I'm not anticipating any updates, but Jamila, in case you want to provide an update, you are more than welcome to. So we'll give Jamila a minute or not. If not, we can also kind of open the floor to Jamila a little bit later on during the call or during the meeting, excuse me, just to provide an update. And just again, providing context to those who are joining us, are members of the public and those watching on YouTube. This is normally just kind of like a drop-in session. We just kind of have it as a standing agenda item and encourage staff from elected representatives to join and provide updates when they are able to. Let me see, I don't see the chat. Okay, well, we'll circle back to Jamila in case she is able to provide an update, but we'll kind of keep the agenda moving, since again, the quorum bit. We also, again, standing update, monthly updates from community-based organizations. This month, we do not have one. We were meant to have one, and then that didn't kind of pan out, and I know separately, Radia, thank you. I know you had reached out to an organization, and there was a little bit of a holding bit on my end. So we will certainly welcome them for the June meeting. So thank you again for kind of starting that up, and we look forward to having them then. The other thing, obviously, as you may all remember, with thanks to Tanisha, we'll be having a presentation by the Alliance for Quality. Is it Quality Education, Tanisha?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And so that will be with the Youth and Education Committee. If you recall, we spoke a bit around childcare workers and what are some things that we can do with them. We are still trying to figure out and kind of work out with the Domingo when that meeting will be. Will it be that Youth and Education will join us that Thursday? I think it's like a May 3rd or something, or if it's that we will kind of join their meeting during Youth and Education and not meet that kind of Thursday. So we're still working out those logistics, but we'll certainly keep everyone updated on that. Okay. And just noting for the chat, for those who don't have access to it, Jamila from Carmen de la Rosa's office just stated, no general update at the moment, but happy to answer any questions that kind of, we may have. So if it's okay, maybe I'll just pause there and see if there are any questions, noting that Jamila is at a separate meeting as well. So thank you, Jamila, for joining us, and recognize that you're at another meeting at the same time. And this is again for Carmen de la Rosa's office.
I think she wrote in the chat that she doesn't have a general update right now, right? So just
Exactly.
questions today. Yeah.
Exactly. So if anyone has any kind of questions, obviously relating to the remit of our committee, Jamila remains available to answer, respond. All right. I have a question, Jamila, if it's okay. Well, more like two, but I'll be quick. One is around, and I'll come to this in a minute, with in the new business. There's what I understand is called the Faith-Based Act for Affordable Housing. I've just learned about this like late last night today. And just to give everyone a bit of context, and again, I'm kind of catching up on all of this. Let me see if I can find what Wayne sent me. So Wayne is our chair, as you know, of land use. And there have been some concerns. Let me just pull up the email. So this, it's a Senate bill. So for the state Senate, it was put forward by State Senator, trying to find the name.
Bernardis.
Thank you, Jay. And so so the bill is called here. Yeah, Faith-Based Affordable Housing Act. And it's meant to, okay, here we go. So it's meant to kind of, how do we think about affordable housing, and then think about what does that look like for faith-based, organizations. In many cases, a lot of faith-based locations, whether it's churches, synagogues, mosques, and so on, in many cases, they own the land. And so there's a bit around a partnership regarding how, the city, but developers can also work with these institutions in such a way that also helps address the affordable housing crisis. However, there's been some concern that apparently the current legislation, or the current bill, that has been put forward includes some language that apparently nullifies current protections for churches and other religious properties that have been landmarked to allow developers to build market rate, including luxury condo housing on site and so on and so forth. So just wanted, Jamila, I don't know if you know much about that right now. It seems like it's been maybe percolating for a little bit, but it's just now kind of coming to my attention. I'm going to put some links in the chat, but just wanted to see what kind of the councilwoman knows about it, kind of her position, and so on. Thank you. No worries, Jamila. Oh, you can't unmute here. Let me, oops, sorry. Oh, hold on. First of all, you should be, I'll promote you to panelist, and maybe that should work.
Okay. Hi guys. Wow, that was a struggle. I lost service. So if you asked your question, I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to repeat it. I had to run up the stairs of where we are.
No, all good. So no, I was just mentioning to everyone that there is a current bill in the state Senate. It's called the Faith-Based Affordable Housing Act. And apparently there are some concerns with some of the language in it. I guess the intention of the bill, my understanding, I have not read it. Again, this was just brought to my attention. But the intention of the bill is to kind of work with faith-based institutions and help kind of promote affordable housing, so on and so forth. But apparently it currently includes some language that nullifies landmark protections for churches and other religious properties. And so there's kind of and I'll forward on some information on to all of you, not necessarily for a discussion for the committee right now, because I think obviously we need to kind of read about it and learn, but I know land use we'll discuss in May. So maybe that's something we can talk about in May. But I did just kind of want to ask what the councilwoman kind of knows about it, and, kind of her stance on the current issue. Thanks.
So it hasn't been discussed fully within the office, but like you stated, it is a state bill. So I'll talk to her about her and our legislative director, who is Kiana, about if anything in the city council has come out of whether supporting it or trying to change the language and anything like that. So I took note of that, so I could bring it back to you. I'll ask them tomorrow during our staff meeting, and then I can email you an answer.
Perfect. Thank you. That would be super helpful. And what I understand as well, just so you all know, that Senator Jackson is one of the co-sponsors of the bill. But again, there seems to be kind of the organization, there's an organization that's kind of following up on this and saying, we want to support this, but this particular language within the bill as it stands is concerning. This needs to be amended before we can actually support it. But at the same time, there's a separate organization, I believe they're called Open Tech, that are pushing quite hard for it. And they, as you probably can imagine, are developers that are kind of really pushing for this to go through with the text as it currently stands. So there's a bit of a back and forth on some of that. But I'll pause there and just to see, because it actually, just wanting to see if anyone has any thoughts on it or is familiar with this or maybe has a bit more background than I do on this.
Um, I'll just say I think Wayne is getting that concern from a person who specifically has an issue with it, and I've actually spoken to the senator's staff on that issue. And I think that claim is based on how someone chooses to read the language. Um, and I think, you know, I guess I don't know why Wayne, I would just suggest that you shouldn't just take one person's claim without hearing the other side on this issue. You know, if the churches are there with it, there are a bunch of organizations supporting it. And I'm happy to send over like a breakout of what the bill actually does. I won't be able to vote on this, by the way.
I figured. No, thank you, Jay. And I think, I mean, with anything that the committee comes across kind of, what we do, I think it's important to, as you mentioned, look at all sides and inform ourselves, so that we can have an informative discussion. And so I put the link in the chat to the actual bill. I encourage everyone to read it. And then, we can kind of decide in terms of how we move it forward, what kind of conversations we may need to have with the relevant parties. I think obviously probably a key one would be with Senator Jackson's office, just to kind of get a bit more information as they're closer to the details, being that the senator is a co-sponsor of it, so that we can kind of get a better understanding of what's happening. Indiana, please.
Thank you. I was wondering if if a public hearing has been scheduled yet. I didn't see it in the website link, but just like if there is one, just so that we can keep the date in mind. Do you happen to know, Jay?
So it's not like the city council where
Okay.
every bill gets a hearing.
Gotcha.
Hearings at the state level, it's rare unless
I see.
it's something that's like required to like you're hearing too many conflicting stories or something.
Gotcha.
So
Okay,
we don't do hearings on bills specific. It's not very common.
Okay.
But besides that, I'm gonna copy and paste. I don't know why they're reading it that it affects landmarks, but I will copy and paste word for word what it says in the bill language that literally says that nothing in this section shall be interpreted to override, and then it adds historical sites or landmarks. And you guys can decide for yourself.
That's
I have a
helpful.
quick follow-up question, if that's okay. Thank you. So, since they don't have a hearing, and I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head, are they hoping to vote on this in the current legislative session, or is there like any sense of the timeline that we should keep in mind?
It's a new bill, so I can't really tell you if they plan on prioritizing this bill to pass by the end of the session. That's up to the member. But I can tell you that nothing really passes both houses without concerns being addressed. So I wouldn't expect this to move unless things are addressed. But I think that concern on the landmarks is not really true. So this is what it says in one of the subdivisions. I put it in the chat. I have to read that, right, Mario? When we do things in the chat.
Yes, please.
All right. So nothing in this section shall be interpreted to override the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, the Freshwater Wetlands Act, the Public Health Law, or regulations promulgated in accordance with any such act or law, nor require the alteration or demolition of buildings designated as historical sites or landmarks as of the effective date of this section pursuant to the New York State Historic Preservation Act of 1980 as amended, or the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 as amended, or the New York City Landmarks Law of 1965 as amended. So I would say share that with Wayne. To me is from what I heard, it was one specific person who decided to do a whole email blast on the issue and is trying to get community boards to oppose.
Thanks, Jay. That's super helpful. And just for, Wayne has mentioned that he hasn't yet read it as either. He's just forwarding on what he's received. So I just wanted to kind of, be clear in terms of for the record. And I'll also forward on some of the things, and some of the correspondence includes a response from Senator, is it Gonardis? Is that how the senator's name is pronounced?
Yeah.
Okay, from that person's that senator's team in response to this person. And it just says, I think the issue with the language in S7791 currently is that we specify that and this was sent at the end of March, again, for context, so it's quite possible that between March 27th, which is what it says, to today, it's been changed to what is being now reflected. But it says here, again, for the record, note, okay, here, with the language in S7791 currently is that we specify that no provision of the bill would require the alteration of demolition of buildings designated as historical sites of landmarks, when it should plainly say that it does not supersede various historic preservation statutes in New York City landmarks law. So any property owner wishing to restore, alter, demolish, or reconstruct a designated property in New York City, for example, would still need to receive a certificate of appropriateness through the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. That process would in no way be impacted by the as of right development created in S7791. I'm making a series of other amendments soon so I can clarify the relationship between our bill and these existing statutes when I do so. And so that's, and I think, kind of that response is in line with what you just shared, and Jay as well, that yes, this is here, but it does not supersede what is already in place. So again, I'll forward this on so that colleagues can take a look and again, kind of come to your own conclusions on it. Cool. That was actually my item for new business. So we kind of checked that off here. I hope that's fine. So yeah, thank you. So I'll then move on in terms of the agenda. If there's not, is there anything else on that before we move on? Since we kind of talked about it there. No? Okay. All right. All right. So then the next item, as I mentioned, we don't have any presentations from organizations. The other thing that I did want the committee to talk about this evening is the resolution on standards for future housing developments. I wanted us to vote on it tonight, but we don't have quorum. So it will have to go to the executive committee. Sorry. And so, oops, sorry. And so one of the things that I was doing, and that I tried to get input from is around the AMI. You all recall that was kind of a big question that we had, and I reached out to some of the electeds' offices, and they did come back with some helpful information. So I wanted to share that with all of you. Let me just pull it up now. Okay, let's see. So, and I think one of the things that I was pretty clear to me in terms of the different responses I received is that depending on which entity you're going to, there's a different definition of what the AMI is for our area, which is frustrating, honestly, because we want the resolution to really be as much as possible reflective. We recognize that some areas of Washington Heights and Inwood, AMI is a bit higher than in other areas. Well, we also want to make sure as much as possible that this is, a very equitable process. So I'm just going to read here what was shared by one of the electeds, for instance. Currently, the AMI for each city is set by HUD at the federal level, as we all know. 100% AMI ranges from 98,000, so that's a family of 1, to 186,400 for a family of 8. We took a look at the 2022 census, and they provided an attachment, and I'll make sure that you all see that as well. And they use the zip codes 132, 133, 134, and 140, so the ones that are in our area. Based off of what they pulled together, the data shows that the AMI ranges for CB12 are 56,752 to 77,209. However, and then I kind of want to stress that however, because I was like, that's definitely not everyone, a lot of people do not make that amount. When you really think about the average person, most people do not earn that amount, unfortunately. So what they included here, however, based on additional data from the EDI, so you may recall we received a presentation from Cheryl. So the EDI is the New York City Equitable Development Data Explorer. So that's the thing that also, the tool that they use in terms of kind of racial equity and so on, and the impact of new housing development, so on and so forth. So I'm coming to that now, Tanisha, hold on. So using the EDI, we know that most households, again, most, recognize it's not going to capture everyone, most households in CB12 fall at 30% of the AMI, making 39,547 to 54,047 as a more reasonable range. Now, again, recognizing that there are people who make less than that. And so there was a separate, I received kind of an additional information from, I think these numbers were, let me just pull it up. So this is from a different elected's office. And these numbers are from HRA. And it was including, and it was more about fixed income. And so those figures were around, so particularly at the lowest range, particularly kind of our aging neighbors and those who, people with disabilities and on fixed incomes, making anywhere between 15,000 to 25,000 a year. So obviously quite different than what the EDI figure was giving. And that apparently doesn't even show up on the AMI chart. But it says here, most of the parents or kind of people that are reaching out in terms of their constituent services are making up to $30,000 a year, which really isn't a lot. And so I think in terms of what we do in this resolution, I think there's a bit around capturing those lower income brackets. So particularly the fixed income for these different populations, but also those that, as mentioned here, that are reaching kind of within that 30,000 range, but also including the number that we've pulled or that has been pulled from the EDI. Because we do use that as well. Tanisha, do you want to come in? Because I see you're putting some stuff in
Yeah,
the
I was just gonna say that for sure. Like we need to, on the resolution, it needs to be made clear that, I would say 2 different lines, right? So for one line, for, our low income or disabled or social security fixed income people, and then another line for people that might make a little bit more, because the way that it was situated at first with the 50,000 income, the way that they do the AMI, now that you're looking into it, Chair, I guess you can understand what I'm saying. They really don't count the people that need to be counted the most. So yeah, it's always good to look at these other sources so you can really get a gist of, how much people are making in the community. And for me, and for the community members that I know, even 30,000 is high. If we're talking about people who live on a fixed income, it's that fixed income is whatever that social security check is or that disability check is, right? And a lot of time, like they're just now raising it a little bit, but a lot of times that falls in between 10 and maybe 14,000 for a year. That's what people on fixed incomes like Social Security and disability are living on. And that's the realization that we want to make sure is in this resolution. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Tanisha. I think one of the things is just make sure we have that data. And so that's why I asked it. And as you mentioned, getting it from the different sources to be able to say, okay, this is actually what we've been able to pull, that there's wide range of income levels in our community. But we recognize that in terms of who really needs affordable housing, it is our neighbors that are kind of at the lower end of that spectrum. And we know that, and there's a kind of a big need for that. So I'll go ahead and kind of put that in. Obviously we can't vote on anything tonight because we don't have quorum. And so what will probably happen is I'll need to touch base with Kathy. It'll probably have to be presented at the executive and have the executive committee vote on it. And then it would go ahead to the general meeting for, you know, kind of the full body vote, so to speak. And so I'll kind of come back to you all on that. I just put, I just put in the chat just really quickly. So I understand that Senator Jackson is leading on a bill to provide, so it's called, what is it called here? I don't even see the name of it. Okay, provides for calculating the AMI, area median income, for affordable housing programs in a city with a population of 1 million or more. It's currently in the committee of the Senate, is what I understand. And so I've just put that in the chat. So the sponsor is Senator Jackson, and it's being co-sponsored by 2 other state senators. So Senator Cordell Clear and Senator Luis Sepulveda. And so I've just put that in the chat. I encourage you all to take a look at that. So that's always the conversation we come around a lot in terms of how the AMI is calculated and ensuring that it's not leaving people behind, which it currently is, and not truly being reflective. So yeah. Any questions or points or anything on that? No. Hi, Richard.
Hello.
The other thing before I forget, another point of feedback that I received as well, which I think is a fair one and want to kind of share with all of you for the resolution, is the fact that for a lot, and I don't recall, I don't think we've captured it just yet in the resolution as it stands, or the draft, excuse me, is that a lot of the new housing developments are aimed at kind of the studio or the 1 bedroom, rather than kind of 2 or 3 bedrooms. And it's not truly reflective, again, back to the point about, is this right for this community? A lot of our neighbors live in multi-generational households and need more space, or have large families, and so on and so forth. And so including a line about, you know, the size of the unit and ensuring that those apartments are also affordable and not, you know, kind of market rate and stuff like that. Because usually what I see is, and I don't know if you've all seen this, but especially for those mixed market buildings, where the affordable ones are like a studio or a 1 bedroom, and then everything else is market rate for the 2 or 3 bedroom. And it's like, it's not very helpful, but yeah. You seem to agree, Indiana.
1000%, yes. It's something that I hear all the time from like community folks, and just when I look, I have like an adjacent thing to that, which is that usually the units that are accessible, like wheelchair accessible, for example, those are also primarily studios. And as someone who, like, you know, if you have 2 chairs or a standing frame, like, I need more space, not less, kind of, you know, thinking. So that's going to be like an advocacy piece for me moving forward. But yeah, I mean, something bigger than the studios or 1 bedrooms for families, I think that's really important. I agree.
Thank you. And this was one of the points that we raised with the Department of City Planning in terms of the City of Yes for housing opportunities, because again, a lot of their presentation is around, you know, adding some housing here, adding some housing here. The whole kind of premise is we add a little bit of housing there, and then ultimately it kind of adds up, which is true. But again, it needs to be something that is actually useful for people who are already here. So cool. Thank you. And we'll make sure that that's included in the draft resolution. Okay, so that's it. I don't see any other points or hands on that. If that's the case, then I can suggest that we move on to updates on committee priorities. I will kind of turn it over to all of you. if you want to kind of go ahead and just give like a 1-2 minute update on what you're working on and kind of where things are at. And I think particular kind of what are the things that I can support with or help push forward. And then exactly kind of what's the forward look between now and June. So you know that we'll have obviously our summer break, but thinking about what can we achieve on those particular items between April and June, I think is really helpful to think about how we map out the rest of our work. So don't all jump at once.
I could give a quick little note about the vision, like the visioning workshop, if that's helpful. Okay, so I attended the visioning workshop and I saw that Mariel was there, and I don't know if anybody else from our committee was there, but they gave a brief overview of what role, the city agency plays. And then basically we broke up into groups of about, like 6 to 8 or maybe 6 to 10, kind of in different groups. They had tables that were Spanish speaking and English speaking. And they had some exercises that started out with looking at the area where the new building is going to be located and the surrounding, I guess like neighborhood, right? And they had marked out like restaurants and coffee shops, pharmacies, and like health facilities, things like that. And basically just opened it up to say, what does this neighborhood need more of? And one of the, I can, I guess, share from my little circle, one of the topics that came up was like diversity in the cuisine that is offered. And that was just like, there was somebody like very, very focused on that and like creating opportunities for different kinds of restaurants or food carts or things like that to come into the neighborhood. And my group, we didn't stick so much to the like specific format, but kind of like the second piece of that discussion was the building has potentially like a STEM, like a science and math space. And the discussion was around whether that space should maybe be split and include like kind of like a more general community space that can be used for different activities. And in my group, they talked a lot about the arts. So if whatever that, instead of being a STEM, having it be a STEAM space, which would be math, science, and the arts as well. And that seemed to get a lot of support in my group. I don't know about the others. And then finally, the third kind of exercise was just covering the types of affordable units that could be included in the new building. And so some of them were for seniors or those with disabilities. And they showed us like the income ranges for who would qualify for that. Others were for kind of like a broader range, and it was kind of like the AMI and the family size, and they showed us the charts, and I don't remember the incomes right now. And then the third unit, or the third like paper that they showed us, was about opportunities to buy units and the incomes that, like the income range of who could buy units in that building. And they tried to get a sense of whether the opportunity to buy units was something that the community supported and thought was important. In my group, there were seniors who were very interested in that. But what we discovered through the conversation was that a lot of the seniors who were interested in that option didn't actually earn enough to qualify. Like they had just under the like minimum income needed to buy a unit. So that may be an advocacy point, that if we do have these units for purchase, maybe even just a couple, right, set aside that are below the income guidelines that they had currently designated. So I'll leave it at that. I know I went, I think, more than my 2-3 minutes, so I'll leave it at that.
No, completely okay. Yeah, I guess just a couple reflections. So yes, I did go, but unfortunately I joined late because I was coming from a family function. But I was impressed by the turnout. I mean, I think it was well attended for an event of that nature in the evening.
And
Um,
rainy.
and rainy, exactly. So I was actually quite impressed with the turnout. One of the things before I come to the point on the buying the units, before I forget, so HPD they're kind of still collecting final results, I think until the 12th. And they want to come back to us to present the findings, or kind of, as if you recall, after the visioning workshop, they're gonna look at the data, read all the survey, look at the input, pull it together into kind of a report of some sort. That would then kind of help inform what the request for proposal will look like. That was kind of part of the process. And so they're coming back to present. We're still trying to figure out when, because obviously they can't make it now because the fact that the deadline is the 12th. And so we're trying to say, I'm trying to work with Kathy if maybe they present at the general meeting. Because I think it's not just of interest to us, but I think it's of interest to the wider community board. It'll kind of be a wider audience for them to kind of talk about what came out of that experience. On the housing or the opportunity for home ownership, I know that's been brought up several times, for kind of more middle income people within the community as well. And so I think that's a point for us as a committee to think about moving forward, as you rightly mentioned, how do we balance creating opportunities for, our neighbors in the lower income brackets, but also those who are maybe, earn a little bit more, want to stay in the community. In many cases are probably from the community, but, want to kind of own something. So, yeah. And I think Radia, you were there. I saw you there.
Yeah.
Do you have any reflections on kind of the visioning workshop?
Oh, I thought it was really good. Like you said, it was really well attended. I didn't expect to see so many people there. I love the information that they provided and the exercises. It really let us know exactly what they're trying to do. And I think they're on the right track, and I appreciate them trying to get so much feedback from the community. I really I'm happy that they are looking for our input. So I think it'll be a nice, this won't be like a run of the mill kind of another building that they're just gonna throw up. It's gonna really reflect the community, which I think is important.
For sure. Thank you. Please,
Thought of
Sophia.
one other little thing to add. Another topic that came up was that looking for uses, not just the building itself, but also the area around it. So there was a discussion about like maybe the STEAM programming could include some sort of like garden or, some sort of like outdoor environmental focus. And part of that discussion was that you can find a lot of environmental initiatives downtown and, not so much in communities of color and lower income communities, so that could be something unique and special for the STEM, I guess, like component to also include.
That's awesome. Thank you. And then I think, Indiana, you had also suggested that you were interested in working on the city of Yes for housing opportunities, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So
Don't
I
have too much to report there yet.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was gonna say, I think I copied you on the email, but ultimately, just for the knowledge of the wider committee and the public, they're hoping to present, is it May or June? I forgot.
I think they said May.
May.
Yeah.
May. And there's kind of like this whole process that they'll kind of talk us through and so on. So stay tuned, I guess is the point. Because we'll certainly need to be quite involved and engaged in that process. And a part of that presentation, I think we should certainly press for what are the next steps and what are the points of engagement for us. It's not just that they present to us, but then other opportunities throughout this whole thing before it goes to city council and so on and so forth for us to engage. Maybe it's, we put out a resolution as it gets closer to that point, in the fall, and so on. So,
Maria, would it be helpful to ask the elected officials before we hear from the city, like what their concerns are, or do you think it's better that we connect with the elected officials after after we hear the presentation?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of them are aware. I do know that we had so Wayne, Kathy, and I had an initial conversation with Department of City Planning in January, And we're actually also joined by Jamila from Carmen de la Rosa's office as well. At that point, we were all mostly in listening mode. And so I think that is a good point. And maybe it's can they provide an update in terms of where they stand on it, you know, what are their views. I think we'll just need to sort out the timing, because obviously that'll have to then be the same evening as the DCP presentation, but we could maybe also move it to June. And so let's figure that out, Indiana, you and I, in terms of timing, and figure that out. But yeah, I think that's the right call and next step. Mhm. Yep. Anyone else want to provide updates on their work?
Hey, well, you know, culturally responsive mental health services. I'm trying to get someone to come present. That's the only update that I have.
That's a good update. Thank you. Thank you for your work on that. Go ahead, Jay.
I still owe a bunch of other emails, but I did start one on one of the budget requests that we had, and I CC'd you. One of the contacts I got to bounce back on. I still haven't heard. I asked Ebenezer if we could follow up with them. But the next age, because that was a DOB request, Department of Buildings, and the next one is HPD, but there's a lot of them, so I've been trying to format the questions so they're clear. So that one's gonna be a larger email.
Thanks, Jay.
But I did share the whole list with everyone and with some notes and stuff.
Yes, I did see that, and thank you so much for your work on all that. On DOB, maybe I could come back and provide a contact, and maybe that will help kind of move that email chain along. And then on HPD, so Marshall and Richard, you'll probably remember Ariel Miranda. And so he was formerly he was actually the former chair of this committee some time ago, and he's now at HPD. And so it's nice to kind of have someone that we know kind of on a personal level. And so I may be reaching out to him for some questions. Awesome. Thank you, Jay, for your work on that. And anyone else? While we wait, I know Michelle is continuing to work on the list of current kind of ongoing developments and figuring out what the status is. And so, yeah, so we'll hopefully have an update from her next month in terms of kind of where things are at with some of those, and she has been reaching out to them. She actually sent me something just recently. Let me see if I can find it. Says no response yet. So that's what it is. But hopefully for May we'll actually have a bit more information for some of these developers, excuse me. I guess then maybe on my end, in terms of updates, I followed up with Adang on the rent guidelines board. So you all recall that Adang is one of the tenant representatives on the rent guidelines board and presented to us last month. I haven't heard back yet because one of the things he mentioned was around getting involved in the advocacy process earlier on rather than like, you know, in May, June, when it's time to kind of pull together a resolution. And so I will follow up again just to see, because they did mention about kind of, you know, if we can attend some of the public hearings. I'm sure that I wonder actually, let me check now if those dates are publicly available already. It's possible that they are. Let me see. Okay, rent guidelines board. Meetings.
Right.
Okay.
Are you hungry?
Oh, sorry. Hold on. I'm gonna mute myself.
Hungry?
Okay, so I'm on the website. So on rent guidelines board, it looks like there's going to be a public meeting. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. There was one that was last week, but there are a couple others that are happening. So there's one Thursday, April 11th at 9:30. There's another one, and it's also hybrid, so you can well, it's live streaming on YouTube, so it's not, doesn't really feel like you can actually engage. One on Thursday, April 18th. There's another one on April 25th. So again, there's several that they have here. And then they also have, it looks like the session on April 25th is a bit of a longer day. So it's like half of a day, where the first half is working with or kind of hearing from the owners or landlords. And the second half is hearing from tenant groups. So I'll be following up with Adang to see how we can participate in that process. But if you are available, I know it's a little hard because it's during the workday. But if you are able to kind of participate, let me know. And I'll also again kind of follow up and see what opportunities there are for us to engage in the process. Just wanted to flag that. Cool. I think that's it in terms of committee strands of work. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything. I can't recall. So if there's nothing else on that, I'd like to move on to new business. Does anyone have new business?
I have kind of a question about new business. I know that right now the participatory budget window, I think it kicks off April 6th. So I have not looked to see like which council members, I think Abreu is participating and I think De La Rosa as well, but just like to put it on our radar. I don't know if any of them are like health or housing related or community, I think they're community related because they are community initiatives. And sorry, I'm like completely showing that I'm just getting my head around this, but there's like the Civic Engagement Commission and they have a participatory budgeting. And then there's the City Council participatory budgeting. And if I'm not mistaken, the City Council is more like fixing things, like less programmatic. So we may want to look at the timeline for the Civic Engagement Commission's initiatives, because those might be more within our committee. And that's it. So more questions than answers, but just wanted to like throw it out there that I think some of that is happening right now.
That's exactly right. Those are the types of things we want to hear about in new business. So all good in terms of where does it fit in the agenda. Thank you. Because this is one of those things where like when you get a lot of emails, you see, but it doesn't necessarily click. And so I did see that, but it, I didn't necessarily actually say, hey, there's actually something for us. And you're right. It is something that we should look at. I just put in the link, this is the one for the city. So this is the civic engagement one. And also actually, while we're on that, I think if you're not on the newsletter for the Civic Engagement Commission, you should definitely sign up. I think I don't know if it's like weekly or I don't know, I get so many emails, but anyway, it does a really awesome job, I think, of capturing key things that are happening across the city. And I think for the work that we do, it's really, I'll forward one of the latest emails and there should probably be like a subscribe button at the bottom or something, but encourage you all to sign up on that if you're not there already. Thank you. So yes, let's look into that and kind of see what I also need to wrap my head around the process and kind of what that looks like and how people engage and so on. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I have maybe just one other point I just remembered for new business, but I want to see first if others have points for new business before I. No. Okay. So the city has the public engagement unit. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that office. So I forgot when they were established, but they ultimately kind of work like a grassroots organizing type of arm of the city, so to speak, and they work on a lot of different issues. And a while ago, I think it was in probably late January, February. I actually saw them on the news. The only reason why I know is because I know some people that work for that office, and I saw them on the news. I was like, oh, that's so and so. And they were doing kind of door knocking. I believe it was in Brooklyn at the time, but it was around what are your rights as a tenant. And they were doing it not just in English, but in Spanish, but also in kind of other kind of key languages for that particular neighborhood. And I had reached out to them, to the person that I know there in the team, and I said, hey, we're doing, I'm on the Housing and Human Services Committee here in CB12. Has kind of the PEU done anything similar to what I saw on the news? It was on Spectrum. Anything similar to that in Washington Heights and Inwood. I think one of the things that we always hear about is people don't know what their rights are as it relates to housing. And so how can we get that word out more efficiently? And they literally have like teams and like tons of people literally going building to building, flyering, door knocking, having those conversations, letting people know what their rights are. And I think that's incredibly impactful and powerful. Point is that I've reached out to them. I need to follow up with them and kind of see if maybe something like that can happen in our area, because I think that would be really, really good. So, yeah. Cool. Any other points for new business? Okay. Old business? Okay. I'm seeing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Deanna. Well, the second, even though we didn't officially adopt the meeting, but
Second.
awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope just as a note, I won't be around in May. I'll be not available for the meeting, but I'll kind of send more information online about that or in our emails about that. So take care, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. And thank you, Richard. And thank you, Radia. Really appreciate you both in particular. Take care. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye. Cheers.
You don't have any reason to hold on to your.